Hello and welcome. I'm Daniel Collison, Managing Partner of Advice to Advisors. We're an educational firm working exclusively with financial advisors. So happy that you can make it to the virtual summit today, and glad you able to join us with Driving Business with Estate Planning webinars. We've got about 20 minutes, so we're going to get right into it. Now, when we work with financial advisors, the coaching we do always focuses on what the best of the best do. And we know that they've got some very special elements to their business that makes them the best of the best. First of all, they always work with a model, and usually it has some look to a personal CFO model. They are focused on marketing and then prospecting to an ideal client profile. They have a unique value proposition that they take to market. They know how to communicate it effectively, and they're constantly communicating that UVP. And finally, and I would suggest most importantly, they've got a prospecting dashboard. In other words, they've got a number of prospecting methodologies that they are always working. They're not reliant on one method of prospecting. They've got at least 4 different methodologies that they're working with. They've got a referability process. What they know is that the research shows that by asking for referrals, they're making their clients uncomfortable, which ultimately makes them uncomfortable, so they don't ask. They become referable. They do ask for targeted introductions, on the other hand, so they've got a process to do that. They build personal networking groups, so they're working with other professionals that are all focused on the same type of ideal client profile. And finally, they do seminars, which are now webinars, given the pandemic of the day. They've got a series, and they're constantly out in front of prospects. They're the experts, and they're showing themselves as the experts. So they're always working this dashboard. And what we're going to look at now is the type of estate planning webinars that are becoming very profitable to the top advisors and now open to everyone. So what we're going to do is show you some of the slides, the slide deck from some of the actual PowerPoints that we've created for financial advisors. But the reason to focus on estate planning is very specific, in that we create a situation, what Robert Cialdini in his book Persuasion calls privileged moments, where you, the financial advisor, are able to get the attendees to the webinars into a mental space that has them thinking towards their goals, their ultimate goals in this situation, their legacy. And you, the financial advisor, becomes what Richard Thaler, the Nobel laureate, calls the choice architect. You're organizing the context in which your attendees make decisions. And in this instance, we're trying to nudge them, as he suggests, into making good decisions on how they're going to deal with their finances, and specifically how they're going to deal with their estate and the estate planning, so that their legacy plays out the way it wants. And specifically, when we look at an estate planning webinar, what we want to do is drive emotions, so that the right emotions connect with the attendees and they can start making decisions that's going to allow them to look at their own personal legacies. And then what we've got to do as the advisor and as the choice architect, as the presenter of the webinar, we've got to move these attendees through a motivation sequence. And Edwin Locke, who is considered the grandfather of motivation, of goal setting, really lays it out nicely in this sequence, where he says, we all have inherent needs: physical, psychological, philosophical needs. And through those needs, we start to set up values that are learned mostly from family, from our schools, from our communities. Those values and needs play back and forward, whatever the needs are, whatever the values are driving. And through those two, we're going to see that we start to build out our own goals, what we're looking to achieve. And then ultimately, we've got to take action to get those goals achieved. However, what the science shows is, if we're trying to actually help and be that choice architect, we've got to help drive the action. And the way to do this is through emotions, what the scientists call the fuel of goal setting. We've got to get our participants emotionally involved in what, first of all, we're discussing, and secondly, of what it is they're looking to achieve. So we've got to make sure that the emotions are firing on all cylinders. And what we've seen with the estate planning webinars is that we're able to impact the emotions that really matter when it comes to estate planning and ultimately legacy planning. And it's critical that we use those emotions in a way that positively impacts the participants of the webinar. And what we do with the PowerPoints we've created is we actually go to those emotions through questions that you, the presenter, would ask during the webinar. Something as poignant as, do you know exactly what would happen to your family if you didn't wake up tomorrow? Right? We've got to get them thinking about themselves. We don't want to be just dropping information. And unfortunately, for all of the estate planning seminars that I've ever participated in with others, I see huge data dumps of information, and information rarely impacts the attendees emotionally. You're giving them dry information on what the rules, regulations, and laws say. And what we want them to do is think about themselves. We want to bring out the context of what we're trying to get across to them emotionally, and there's no better way to do that than by asking them the big questions. How important is it to you to be able to help your children or grandchildren financially? Is your estate plan leaving a legacy or a mess? Talk to the fact that lawyers, attorneys don't make money by drafting wills and powers of attorney, setting up trusts. Where they really make money is in litigation. Family members suing other family members, siblings against siblings, parents suing children, children suing surviving parents. That's where money is made by the attorneys, unfortunately, and that's due to, their estate plans not being good enough or not even being drafted properly. So we want to make sure that it's a legacy versus a mess, and they've got to understand that. And when we ask them the question, they start emotionally connecting with that so much better. So when we look at the targeted seminar and now targeted webinar process, it's very systematic, and the best of the best really are focused on always process-driven areas of their business. And with the targeted seminar, targeted webinar, starts with who's your market. And the beautiful thing about an estate planning webinar is you're dealing with the upper echelon socioeconomically of the marketplace. They're looking at what's going to happen to their lifelong wealth. And this fits in perfectly to the webinar you're going to set up. You're going to be seen as the expert when you're asking the right questions, and you're able to respond. If you take questions through the chat box, whatever it is, you set up their mindset so that you're asking the right questions, and then you're feeding the right answers, as it were. You've got to work your prospecting plan. There's several ways you can go about getting attendees to your webinar. You can invite your clients and ask them to invite guests. You can go to associations or workplaces where the right type of person would be interested in this type of webinar, or you can get a marketing firm to actually prospect for you and fill the seats of the webinar, as it were. We've worked for a number of years with White Glove, who does exactly that, and they actually do it better than any firm we've ever come across as far as filling seminars and now webinars. So you can do it yourself, or you can make it really easy and use a marketing firm such as White Glove. Then it's up to you to deliver an engaging seminar. And again, I find the easiest way to, first of all, make it engaging is to ask questions. Rather than the age-old data dump, ask the questions that are relevant to the attendees. Ask them in a very thoughtful way, and be ready to move on with what you're trying to push towards them. And finally, you've got to book the appointments. That's what the webinars are all about. Importantly, however, is to be a non-talking head. Again, what I've seen from most seminars and now webinars are people are dropping a lot of information on the attendees, but that doesn't resonate sufficiently. So while you're working through the estate planning webinar, you've got to sound different. First of all, the questions are going to make you sound different. But really, what you've got to do is you've got to take rules of thumb. You've got to take the age-old statements made by the rest of the industry. You know, you need life insurance. Everybody says you need life insurance. Well, I call bull to that one. Who knows what you need? How could we possibly know if everybody needs or anybody needs life insurance or any types of insurance? So you want to call bull on those types of things and say, you know, without an insurance needs analysis, how could we possibly know if you need insurance? We've got to find out if there's a need, and if there's not, fantastic. Hopefully you've built up enough wealth so that you can self-insure. You know, another statement, a will is an estate plan. Well, again, that's nonsense. A will is not an estate plan. A will is the document that helps distribute your estate, your lifelong wealth. Well, if you want to do that properly, you need an estate plan in place before you even go to the attorney to get that drafted. So no, a will is not an estate plan. An estate plan is a very thoughtful system whereby we find out what the distribution is going to be. Yes, absolutely. But truly what the legacy that our prospect and then client wants to see played out. And importantly, and what's going to make you sound very different, if you talk about the estate playing out in front of their eyes rather than once they're gone. So the whole concept of being able to distribute some of those assets so that your client can actually be there when those assets are passed on to their children, grandchildren, charities, will make you sound very different. Booking the appointment at the webinar, a little different than at the seminar. So you've got to be ready to make that offer. And I would suggest you actually make the offer right up front. Tell them that you'll give them the opportunity to set a time with you for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever you're willing to set. But let them know up front that there will be that opportunity near the end, and then give them the opportunity, however you're going to get them to book that appointment, have that opportunity available to them, make it compelling enough that they actually want to meet with you. And that will happen if you get them engaged emotionally. So why estate planning webinars? Well, what's the return on investment? Obviously, you know, we're looking to book appointments immediately, and that is part of the return on the investment you make in the webinar. But certainly for everybody that registered for your webinar, you're going to collect their data. So you're going to have their contact information. There will be some that did register, but they didn't show up the day of the webinar. You'll have their contact information. There'll be those that actually were on the webinar but didn't book the appointment. What you want to be able to do is email them and just say, here's the top 5 or top 10 issues that we dealt with on the estate planning webinar. Please take a moment to read through them. Certainly, if anything resonates with you, feel free to contact me. Otherwise, I'll connect with you in the next week. Give yourself the right to connect with them and then continue on the dialogue, because it's not just those that book the appointment. What the best of the best advisors understand is that they're always filling their funnel with prospects, and it's those that you pull towards you at the webinar, not just those that are there or those that are actually booked the appointment with you at the actual webinar, but everybody that initially registered. There's opportunity for follow-up with those. So a huge opportunity for return on investment. So when you're looking at the prospecting dashboard, given what we're in with the pandemic right now, we need to be firing on all cylinders. We need to be working the dashboard effectively. And that's what the best of the best always do, even in times like this. They're making sure they're referable by connecting with their clients, and not just emails, but phone calls or webinars. They're still asking for targeted introductions or setting themselves up for future introductions. They're in constant contact with their personal networking groups, and they're looking and setting webinars on an ongoing basis. And for those of you that haven't done a webinar as of yet, don't set one, set multiple webinars, because you'll learn from each succeeding webinar what went well, what could be improved upon, and by setting them up ahead of time, you ensure yourself that you're going to learn and do better each and every time. So hopefully that's of value to you. Hopefully you see the value of estate planning webinars, and we'll start booking them into your calendars and getting out to market with those. Our special offer to you today, as well as going to our website and looking at any of the actual PowerPoints that we provide to financial advisors. We are with White Glove holding a webinar, an exclusive webinar, no cost. It's all about becoming your client's personal CFO. It's this Friday, May 8th at 2 p.m. EST. Love to see you there. Register, go to our website or White Glove's website and register for that. Love to see you there. Enjoy the remainder of the virtual summit and have a great day. Take care all. Bye-bye.